Now we're back to the big story around the food FX ban, which was credited to President Buhari speaking yesterday as he's trying to wrap up his holiday and will be returning to Abuja very soon for back to official business. So let's get a bit of a sense, put this into perspectives and context, what Mr. President actually said and what he meant and how we take this moving forward when it comes to what he says, the directive to the central bank to ban official FX sourcing or support for food imports. Let's get Rewane, an economist and economic counselor to Channels Television here and the CEO at Financial Derivatives Company to weigh in on this. Give us the first word as it were. Good morning, Mr. Rewane. Hope you enjoyed your public holiday.
Good morning. It was quite interesting.
Very quite interesting. So just as we're all wrapping up that public holiday, Mr. President spoke on this very important matter, which has been at the forefront, FX restrictions and all of that, FX shortage in Nigeria since 2015. Give us your reading or your understanding of what Mr. President says and later what he actually perhaps meant.
As an economist, I have to differentiate between intentions and directions. This was a gathering of political friends and associates over Salah, and that is not the actual setting for making monetary policy regulations. And secondly, the president himself is not in charge of monetary policy in Nigeria. There is a body called the Monetary Policy Committee and the Central Bank of Nigeria who is in charge, independent and autonomous of the president, to make monetary policy decisions. So it's a bit curious that the president, in the middle of colleagues over RAM and all of that, will make such a far-reaching decision. But having said that, the president had said earlier on that he will create 100 million jobs in 10 years. So that again is another statement of intention. How you carry it out and how you execute it and how you implement it to become real is the real thing. So while I don't want to discount it completely, I would just say that it is just a statement of intention at this point in time. There's a process for monetary policy. There's a process for actually prohibiting imports. There's a process for increasing the number of items prohibited for foreign exchange sourcing in Nigeria. So that process has not been completed, but we cannot discount the president's wishes as nothing, but there is a process, and I think it will take some time before we begin to see the full impact.
Mr. Rewane, thank you so much. But again, can you explain or try to unpack Nigeria's food imports regime or system for us? What do we import in terms of raw materials and finished goods? Which of these do you think Mr. President has in mind? And what does it really mean here? What's the size of what we're talking about and in terms of items?
The food imports in first quarter 2019 was about $624 million. So if you multiply that by 4, you are talking about $2.5 billion a year of food imports. It comes slightly higher than that. We import wheat, we import so many what we call food raw materials. But what is interesting is that the rate of imported food inflation in Nigeria is about 15.3%, while food inflation itself is lower than that. And that food inflation has been the crux and has been the real problem of inflation in Nigeria. But having said that, you can see that inflation has actually come down to 11%. What does this mean? What does this regulation mean if it's implemented? It means as follows, that imported food items will no longer be available on the official foreign exchange list. It means that you will have to buy the money in the parallel market and induce the custom officers. So basically, what you are going to create is a smuggler's paradise. What has happened in Nigeria since we banned the importation of rice has been that the importation of rice in Nigeria has dropped, but correspondingly, the importation of rice into Benin Republic and Togo has actually increased. So basically, you end up, these regulations help in certain respect, but at times it ends up like playing with mirrors. really make that much progress. The progress is in the fact that the value chain, you have to produce it, you have to store it, you have to process it, and you have to get it to the market. So it is also instructive that Nigeria has signed the African Continental Free Trade Area Pact. It has not ratified it yet. However, this pact would allow for free movement of goods within the African region. So in the short run, what you are going to have is that there's going to be economies of scale, there's going to be a lot of political rhetoric, which is what this is part of. But the implementation of this means that the parallel market, the Naira in the parallel market, will actually fall somewhat. The reserves, which are supposedly going to be preserved, the smugglers will still pay for this and bring it in. There have been goods that have been banned in Nigeria for ages, and you still find them on the supermarket. So it's good. It's a good political soundbite, but in reality, the impact on economic activity is not going to be that significant in the short run.
So if we are going to have a blanket ban, because this is what sounds like from what Mr. President says, saying directing the central bank to stop giving FX for food imports. That sounds like a blanket FX ban on anything we call food. But we don't have a full cabinet in place yet. So if you want to do diversification, import substitution, backward integration, it's not the job of the central bank alone. This has to be a total cabinet, if not include the legislature, everybody here on the table.
No, the central bank has limited responsibility for fiscal responsibilities. The monetary policy team, which is the central bank, is in charge of price stability, in charge of inflation targeting, in charge of supervising the banking system. The team, the fiscal team that deals with investment, trade, industry, output, budget, planning, finance, is what we call the fiscal team. The fiscal team puts together incentives that will lead to backward integration, lead to growth objectives, and lead to employment. Those are fiscal responsibilities. They cannot be wished away or discussed by anybody, no matter how senior you are in this country. Trump tried to do all of that, but Jerome Powell came back and said, no, there are limits to the efficacy and the ability of monetary policy to achieve fiscal goals. And that's not going to happen. What is going to happen is that this country, we are going to have to deal with, one, a major fiscal problem we have to deal with in the next 2-3 days is implementing the minimum wage across all grades of government and the private sector. We have to assign portfolios to the fiscal team. They have to set, there's going to be a retreat where they're going to talk about how to meet the goals of growth. Your growth is still suboptimal. Not only is it non-inclusive, it is suboptimal. It does not achieve that which you want to achieve. The president wants to create 10 million jobs a year for the next 10 years. The president wants to achieve 25,000 megawatts of reliable power supply in the next 3 to 4 years. Those are major lofty goals, and we have to do that. So I can understand the president's anxiety and determination to hit the road running after the past 4 years. But there is a process for implementing economic policy and economic thought. That's what we call it, economic thought. You have to think it through and implement it methodically, and then you will see the results as they come. If not, you will have the consequences, what we call the rule of unintended consequences.
Mr. Rewane, when you touch foreign exchange or FX in Nigeria and a number of emerging and frontier markets, even as we're beginning to see between the US and China, when you talk about currency, that's a live wire as it is, highly inflammable. So when you speak on FX in a country like Nigeria that is heavily import dependent and all of that, then you're touching the nerve of the country as it was. So how do you think the marketplace, economists, investors and others will be reading Mr. President's statement on one hand, his intentions of backward integration, import substitution, economic diversification on one hand, and what his statement could really mean for the market if that is what Mr. President really meant, that is throwing out a blanket ban and order the central bank not to give anybody a dime from the FX reserves?
First and foremost, I don't think the president put a blanket ban. He says, I am going to request the central bank not to release 1 more cent for food importation in Nigeria. That's the statement of it. It's an intention. It's not a regulation. There's a process for going through this regulation. You know, this is Nigeria. So he has said this, just like he said, we hope to create 10 million jobs, 100 million jobs in 10 years. We hope to have 25,000 megawatts of reliable power supply. The president is free to express his intentions and what he wants to do. But we are not in campaign mode. The president is now in power and is going to implement these policies. And therefore, it's not going to have a direct impact immediately on the exchange rate. Maybe subsequently. But you see, these items have been banned anyway. You know, some of this palm oil and sugar and all of these things have been banned. But we still see them all over the place. And the custom officers are also still being promoted for being that effective. But the smuggled goods are all over the place. This place has become a smuggler's paradise. So what you have and what you are going to find is that as time goes on, because of the exchange rate adjustment, you will find that Nigerians will begin to invest in this diversification. You will find that the backward integration will take place, not because of anything, not because of the directive, but because it is more expensive to import food. It is more expensive to embark on medical tourism. It is more expensive to carry out education tourism. This is the beauty of an exchange rate system that is efficient. We are moving towards that direction. And once we allow the monetary policy to do their work independently and autonomously, then you will find that you will get the results that you desire. So my summary is that the president has made a statement over Salah, over Rams and everybody and amongst political well-wishers. It will be broken down. The economic management team will settle down and begin to implement this in a very orthodox and methodical manner. And then we will begin to see the results as they go along. For now, it's a statement of intentions by Mr. President.
So how do you see this playbook being played out, Mr. Rewane? You try to summarize it, but let's get a few more points out of this for us. Who do you see on the table here making this work as a core economic policy agenda of perhaps the president has spoken to the end, then we need to provide the means to that end. So the team would have to work it out. How soon do you think we'll be able to achieve this?
What is going to happen is that, you know, there were governors, APC governors around, and state, you know, Kebbi, Ogun State, and all the other states, that the food producing states are going to lash onto this and say, we need some monetary policy support from the central bank intervention, anchor borrowers program. We need that foreign exchange is prohibited to these people so that they can create jobs. We need some additional support. We need customs to protect smuggling and all. So again, the time between directions, regulations, and impact in Nigeria is a minimum of 3 to 4 years. So I think that the central bank is going to call in and say, okay, instead of 42 items, we now have 44 or 45 items, or 48 or 50-something items. We are not going to disburse foreign exchange to anybody officially to import these finished products, which was not happening anyway in the first place. They will now go further to now say with the Anchors program, we are going to give more facilities. We are going to ask banks, small, medium-scale, and microfinance banks to provide facilities and credit to this sector so that we can create jobs and do all the nice things that are being proposed. But in reality, it's not going to alter the needle. It is not going to change the international financial destiny of Nigeria, not in the near term. And that's all I can say for now.
Mr. Rewane will pretty understands that President Buhari has just given you CEOs a lot of job to do this morning as you folks are getting into the various board of directors and management meetings what to discuss. You guys perhaps thought you were going to have a very easy Wednesday, but the president has just given you folks a tough job. So you folks go work it out. Thank you so much, Mr. Rewane, CEO and Financial
That's his job. His job is to ask people to do things, and we have to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rewane. Do have a great day. Let's take a break here, everyone. We'll be right back. We'll go straight into Marketplace.